welcome to this afternoon's panel on managing global commons. How can Indian Ocean countries collaborate to best manage these shared resources? Now, I know that we are speaking to what appears to be an empty hall, but those that are here make up with quality, and therefore it's quality that matters. Thank you for coming. There's also a reason why I'm standing here before you instead of sitting there, and it's really to wake you up so that you can see me and so that it's an after-lunch session, and I'm deeply aware of the difficulties in listening to anyone immediately after lunch. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great privilege for me to be asked to moderate this afternoon's session at the Indian Ocean Conference 2024 here in Perth. The moderator is generally expected to be seen and not heard, but I have every intention of making myself heard throughout this panel, so you'll have to bear with me. Part of the reason is also that I've had the pleasure of serving in Australia, in Japan, in the United States, in India, so that makes me Mr. Quad, so to speak. If there were a bodybuilding competition, I would be registered as Mr. Quad. But also because I've served for many years on the other side, beyond the firewall, beyond the bamboo curtain in China as well. Now today, I'm going to begin by laying the ground initially by quoting a few historians and writers, and let me begin with Admiral Alfred Thayer Mahan, the great US thinker, who had said, "Whoever controls the Indian Ocean dominates Asia." This is a well-known quotation from Mahan. He also said, "This ocean is the key to the 7 seas in the 21st century. The destiny of the world will be decided in these waters." And frankly, in the 21st century, we are living that. There was also a great thinker from India, in fact, our first ambassador to China, a scholar and a naval strategist to boot. His name was Ambassador K.M. Panikkar. He had also said in his essay titled India and the Indian Ocean, in his very introductory paragraph of that essay, he had opined that India never lost her independence till she lost the command of the sea in the first decade of the 16th century. And he is considered quite prescient in his writings on the unfolding great power contestation that we see before ourselves at this very juncture. Even Halford Mackinder, the geographer, the British geographer, who generally thought of the world as an island with sea power depending on land bases, he too acknowledged in his essay on democratic ideals and realities that sea power inevitably has the last word in the rivalry with land power because of the unity of the oceans. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm reminded of the olive Ridley turtle that we just saw, and we heard about that from, I think it was Mr. Nick Abraham who spoke at the very beginning. The olive Ridley turtle actually represents the unity of the oceans. When you look at the entire range in which the turtle is found, you'd be surprised to see it really covers all the oceans: the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, the South China Sea, and so therefore I think it's a very good symbol for this conference as well. Let me begin by stating the obvious, that the world is in flux. There is a great deal of uncertainty today in terms of the emerging global order. There is a great deal of contestation taking place, and I would say that these are best summarized in the 7 T's. All these words start with the letter T, and they are prone to contestation no matter which geography we are referring to. And particularly, this is a fact in the Indian Ocean. For example, trade is at the heart of contestation. Trade is also being weaponized today. Then there is the next T of technology. We have seen the weaponization of technology, the sanctions, the embargoes, the restrictions, the export controls surrounding the entire discourse, 5G, artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth. Then there are the ubiquitous territorial disputes, and we see them all over the region. We have seen them in the East China Sea, we see them in the South China Sea. The Himalayas between India and China are also witnessing this contestation over territorial differences, and we see much of that also playing out as we look at the Western Indian Ocean towards Africa, particularly the West Asian region. There is also the T of terrorism, which also radiates through this unity of oceans from across the Indian Ocean all the way to the Pacific. But instead of uniting us in our fight against terrorism, it actually divides us today. For there are countries, even permanent members of the Security Council, that use technical holds to deny the public listing, UN listing of terrorists from the Jaish-e-Mohammed and the Lashkar-e-Toiba, and you're aware of that as well. Then there is the T of tenets and narratives as to whose governance is better, whose system of social, political, economic, and cultural governance is superior. And it pits the democracies and the liberal states against authoritarian and autocratic states today. We also see that all this results in a lack of transparency. There is change taking place. There is a shift in the balance of power. The Chinese economy has risen. The Chinese Navy is growing. But is it really transparent? I would say it's not transparent. And in fact, we can do a lot of bean counting with regard to presence, activities, resources, assets. We can count the number of ships, planes, tanks, but we cannot count intentions and motives unless there is dialogue, unless there is a certain degree of confidence building at the multilateral level. And that's absent. Therefore, there is lack of transparency. The last T is that of trust, or the utter lack of it. We have simply no trust today at the international level. Now, we've all seen how the rise of China is in fact one of the main features of the emerging world order. And we see that the world today is also contesting what we call exclusive economic zones. Under UNCLOS, for example, there is provision to claim extended economic zones. The United States of America has also claimed 500,000 square kilometers of extra territory in the oceans. And so we have that happening at the same time as the usual contestation that we see before us. And to my mind, in the Indian Ocean, and this is for the panelists to think over, we have contestation between what we would otherwise deem as friendly neighbors. Take, for example, the Maldives and Mauritius. They have a dispute over their exclusive economic zone, and then you have a dispute between the United States and Mauritius, particularly over the future of the Chagos archipelago and the future of Diego Garcia. And I dare say the Diego Garcia base would be quite instrumental in dealing with the challenge of a Chinese naval presence in the future in the Indian Ocean. Secondly, we also have this phenomena of illegal, unregulated, unreported fishing, IUU fishing. The region is awash with IUU fishing, and to my mind, much of this fishing can be attributed to a particular country. I don't have to again repeat as to which country this might be, but you'll take a guess. A very large number of Chinese fishing fleets are to be found in the Pacific Ocean, in Micronesia, Melanesia, Polynesia, but they're also to be found in the Indian Ocean. In the northern Indian Ocean, there is a lot of what you call unbridled fishing of squid. And although this takes place in international waters, it's really beyond the pale of the Indian Ocean Tuna Commission as regards location or content as to what exactly they're picking up there. And many of these fleets come in without their transponders switched on. The AIS system is switched off. There are what they call reefers, the refrigerated vessels that come and pick up a lot of stuff. So these are like factories, and this is also not covered by the Southern Indian Ocean Fisheries Agreement. So we've got a problem there. The third issue, to my mind, with regard to managing the global commons, especially in the Indian Ocean, pertains to deep seabed mining. We are all aware that, broadly speaking, when we look at a map, We see in the Pacific the Clarion-Clipperton zone, where there are a lot of deep sea resources like polymetallic nodules and thermal vents, rare earths. So there's a scrimmage for this. And we see that in the Indian Ocean, just off Madagascar, there is a ridge called the Rodrigues Ridge, and the International Seabed Authority has actually allocated a lot of acreage there to various countries. China's Comora is also present there, as it is present in the Pacific Ocean. But for me, the more complicating part is that the International Seabed Authority in Jamaica is actually usually short of funds, and it receives large donations from a particular country. And I think, therefore, one must look at how the rest of us fund the ISA appropriately so that it doesn't fall prey to all sorts of machinations. There is also a strange demand by Nauru in the Pacific, which has recently switched allegiance from Taiwan to the People's Republic of China, that within 2 years it wants the ISA to finalize the rules of the road for deep sea mining. And I'm not sure how this is going to work out, because the United States of America is not a member of the ISA. It's actually, as you know, signed but not ratified UNCLOS. It's not in the ISA. And if the US is not in the ISA, it really takes away one big country that supposedly can stave off Chinese pressure in the ISA to guide rules in a particular direction. So I think the US must do a little bit of a rethink there. The next point I want to present to them is, and this is not directly related to the Indian Ocean, but it's the looming issue of the Antarctic Treaty. Now, as you all know, the Indian Ocean is one of the key funnels through which you can actually create a base for future exploitation of the continent, the icebound continent of Antarctica. And while the treaty itself is not coming to an end anytime soon, in 2048, it will be up for a certain amount of reinterpretation by the Antarctic Treaty consultative parties. Those that will have a say include countries that are non-claimant. And by non-claimant, I mean obviously countries like India and China. And so we need to see this in context, because if there are new rules that come up shaping the treaty for environmental protection of the Antarctic Treaty, we may find countries that are already exploiting the krill there, that are creating a fifth station there, that are likely to monitor naval and other missile activity from Antarctica, actually creating more problems for the rest of us. I also want the panel to think closely about AUKUS Pillar 2. Now, AUKUS Pillar 2 speaks about cyber, artificial intelligence, quantum, and undersea capabilities. At least the first 4 of these, cyber, AI, quantum, and undersea capabilities, are things on which the Pillar 2 of AUKUS, which is not strictly in the Indian Ocean, can work with Indian Ocean littoral countries, in my view. And they could perhaps do this through Quad or Quad Plus. The next is space, where I believe that the Asia-Pacific regional space agency forum, which is run by Japan since 1983, that's the best one, APRSAF, for all of us to come together and work. And why should we work together with regard to space in the Indian Ocean? I believe there is a problem with space debris as well. The low Earth orbit is awash with about 7,000 satellites, about 5,000 of them active, at least 2,000 inactive. And there are all sorts of debris that are falling into the Indian Ocean. I can cite at least 3 examples in the last 3 years where parts of the Long March 5B rocket weighing up to 6, 7, 8 tons have fallen into the Indian Ocean in an uncontrolled manner. And so we need to do something about that as well. Piracy is an issue, so we must look at piracy as well in terms of the renewed incidence of piracy in the Arabian Sea, not yet in the Indian Ocean, but at the mouth of the Red Sea. And this has, of course, political reasons as well. On the one hand, the situation in West Asia. On the other hand, the Houthi attacks against merchant shipping, especially passing through the Bab al-Mandab. So we must look at all this and more. Now, I shall resume my seat there and allow the panel to have their say as well. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.